What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode. We've got Marianne Hickman here. She is an accomplished international public speaker, speaker trainer, and personal mentor with a proven track record of helping industry experts monetize their message. She has graced over 2,000 stages worldwide. Amazing. Sharing her expertise on self-development, message delivery, and revenue growth through stage leverage. Marianne is passionate about empowering individuals to achieve financial success and create positive impacts in their communities. She is married to Richard Hickman, and together they are raising 6 children while building an empire of mission-driven speakers. And we were talking about something offline, and I really want to make sure we get to this. There's plenty of stuff we're going to unpack here today, but Marianne, you were mentioning something about that, just that moment of getting on stage. And as a speaker coach and speaker, sometimes we just think about you want to get on more stages and be in front of people. And it almost seems selfish as you're talking about that. And there is a little part where it is vanity for us as speakers because it's exciting. And we want to be in front of people and be that center stage, literally and figuratively. But there is another side to that, which obviously isn't vanity. And if we're only about ourselves showing the spotlight, then clearly we're not going to get on many stages because people are going to smell that commission breath or smell that selfishness that we have in everything. And I see you laughing because I saw a video recently where you talked about that commission breath. But you mentioned something about that stage and getting on and a little bit about Tony Robbins. And I wanted to hit record. So let's go ahead and get into that before you forget that thought and we go off on so many tangents because I know we're going to have a great conversation today.
This is going to be fun. Philip, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's so fun to connect with other speaker trainers and experts of the industry. For me personally, I don't believe in competition at all.
Agreed.
If we serve the same audience, let's freaking go. Let's double down on the value and train people and help people out. So I just want to say thanks for having me on your show. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, of course.
Well, it's okay. So I got to finish this thought. You're right. I don't want to forget it. When I was at Tony Robbins' event, gosh, this was, I want to say it was 2015, somewhere in there. He talked about these 6 different basic human needs. And you'll find similar versions of this, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and lots of things, but he boiled it down into 6. And the 6 basic human needs are certainty, variety, significance, connection, growth, and contribution. Now, we were talking, backstage, if you will, about this significance. And I think this is something that, in fact, I know it's something that everybody needs. We need to be recognized because it helps us emotionally know that we're on the right track, that we're doing the right things. Gosh, there's so many reasons to have this. But if you have a giant need for significance and you fill it with things that actually don't satisfy, that's where you get this ego. That's where you get this insatiable need for everyone to just look at me and look how cool I am and look at all the things that I'm doing. And you lose connection with your audience. Audiences can smell this. They know that it's all about you and what you bring. And that's the total bass-ackwards way to play from stage. If you're going to serve people, guess what? You're in a room with maybe 12 people, maybe 100, maybe 7,000. If you spend 1 minute on stage, that's a minute of each of those people's times. If there's 12 people in the room, that's 12 minutes. If there's 7,000, that's 7,000 minutes. And it's our job when we take the stage to show up to serve, because if they didn't just invest 7,000 minutes to make us feel good, we're already on stage. We're already there. And so this significance bucket, I've worked with people in the past and I've seen people in the past that I observe, and I don't want to throw shade on anyone, but I did watch this behavior where it was a clamoring for title, right? In the company. Like, I need the next title. I need the next thing to build my own ego. And the ego was so crazy fragile, especially when you compare it to the proportion of time that they spent building it. If anyone were to say anything negative, it immediately shatters, because significance and ego are different things. When we get on stage as speakers, there's this moment. It's visceral. You can feel it. And when you are able to move the energy of the audience, my favorite part is when we get on stage, we have some content, and the audience is on their feet organically, clapping not for me, but for themselves, because they just realized that, oh my gosh, I can do whatever the next step is. I believe in myself enough. I'm excited about who I'm becoming. I'm excited about my future. And it's our responsibility, because I believe the stage is a sacred place. It's our responsibility to use that stage, to use that microphone, to move the collective audience and influence for good rather than just deposit in our own ego.
Yes. And this makes me think, I mean, so many great things, but I can't help but think about, you were talking about Tony Robbins, and so many people, they say they want to speak, or maybe they're kind of afraid, they don't have that confidence in themselves. And of course, they think of the greats like a Tony Robbins, like a Marianne, and they feel like they're not good enough to speak. Talk to that person right now that they're afraid of speaking because they don't feel like they have the significance to speak in front of an audience.
This is a harsh truth. Some people do have that fear. I'm just going to rip open and say, quit being selfish. If you don't have the confidence, quit being selfish, because it's not about you. If you have a lack of confidence, that means you fear judgment. That means you fear, what do they think of my outfit? What do they think if I pee my pants on stage? Been there, done that. What do they think if I mess up my words? What do they think? Blah, blah, blah. And it's all about me. So if you lack confidence, it's just because you're so self-absorbed that you're forgetting that you're serving. And when you're serving, you're full of confidence because you know you're maybe 1 chapter or 10 chapters ahead of whoever is in your audience. And no one can erode that from you because you're showing up not to fill your own bucket. And it's funny how the ego, and on the other side of the same spectrum, you have this not good enough. They're really the same stick, just 2 different ends of it. I either am, and both of them are pretending to be something that I'm not. Ego is hypocritical, and this I'm not good enough is lack of living up to your own potential. You're just not giving yourself enough credit. Forget yourself and go to work. It's not about you. It's about your people. I'll never forget the first time I realized this. I was in a speaker training as a student, as a participant, and they gave us an assignment and they said, I want you to have your music ready, your jam ready, whatever lights you up. I love leveraging music to move my energy and the energy of the room. So the next day, they said, we're going to play your music. You get 2 minutes on stage, and your job is to make the audience feel like they are the rock stars. And that was the language that they used. And that was my first, like, oh my gosh, okay, how do I do this? How do I make an audience in 2 minutes feel like they're the rock stars of the show? And as my brain percolated on this, I don't even remember what song I picked, but I had this concept. I'd never been to a concert in my entire life. In fact, my first concert was just last year, if you can believe that. But I went and I was like, what happens when the concerts I've seen videos of, what happens when the singer sings a song the audience knows? The audience sings along. Yeah, they light up their phones, they're singing along, and they feel like the rock stars. I just got goosebumps. They're feeling like they're taking the mic. And I thought, how do I do that? I'm going to pick a song that everybody knows, that everybody's jamming to, and just sing with them. I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to even say my name. Maybe that was a mistake. But my first time on that version of a stage, I tasted it. And I thought, I might have something here. Because if I can remind another person in front of me of how incredible they are and how much their message is needed there are people waiting for you to be bold enough to say your message. And if you don't say it, they just go without. And for me, that's intolerable. So I'm hell-bent on finding the best people on the planet, teaching them how to deliver their message and making some good happen, because you and I both know we're raising kids in this world where evil and corruption has affluence. It has money to continue doing what it's doing, and it's tearing families apart. And I'm not okay with that. We need to be the warriors that bring up good people, that make them crazy wealthy so we can fight and win.
Yes, completely agree there. And I know you didn't say this exactly, but when it comes down to the individual, if you're being selfish, not wanting to get on that stage, just realize that the message that you can share, your background, your story will impact different people than Marianne and myself can. So even if we share the same message, and it goes back to what you're saying, like us being speaker coaches, yeah, some people be like, why would you have a speaker coach on your podcast? That's a competitor. One sense, yes, it is. But at the same time, Marianne is different. She's different than me. She's going to attract different people than I will, and vice versa. But we can also work together, because it's not about, can we make more money? Can we just have all our own clients? There's so many people out there that need to get their message out, and we are not going to be selfish enough to not work together, to come on a podcast together, to not allow other people to get better. We want to be able to bring a great message here. And so your story does matter. Your story is significant. You are significant. So stop being selfish. But Marianne, you mentioned something about serving. And when I think about serving, I think about bringing value. And that's easy to say. But what are a couple of tips that you can give us in order to make sure that as we're speaking, that we are being of service to that audience and really bringing in that value for that audience?
That's a great question. So one of the very first things that I do when I open up an event is ask the audience what they're there for. Now, the event obviously has a theme. It's already attracted them. They're already in the room. They're already on your live. They're already in your podcast. So they kind of have a connection with the event in and of itself in some way, shape, or form. They're there for something. But what I love to do is I don't make it rhetorical. I ask the audience, pull out your notes and write down the first line of what you expect to get before you leave this event, because you sacrificed to be here. If they're a live event, they got babysitters, they got work covered. Maybe some of them are sacrificing salaries. I've even met people that literally use their last dime to buy a plane ticket and couldn't even buy lunch that day because they're banking on that event changing their lives. And so I have them write down, what do you want? And then put a little box next to it as if you expect to check it off and receive it. So if I'm serving the audience, I have to know what they're there for. And I don't let them be vague. I have this saying called, don't use potpourri. Potpourri smells great, but nobody knows what it really is. So if you come to an event and you're like, oh, I want financial freedom. Well, that's cute. Great. Everybody wants that. But what does that mean for you? You got to have a dollar amount that means every month so that you know how far you have to go. Yeah. How close are you? You might be almost there already, or maybe your financial freedom number is too small. It doesn't actually mean freedom. Maybe it means independence, but not freedom. So I have people write down what they want. And what that clues me in on is where to direct my signature presentation. You know this. We don't take notes to the stage. We don't take our phones to the stage. We don't, bring our script to the stage. We don't speak behind a podium. We're just standing there to deliver. And if we have a plan that we are married to, it might not be what the audience needs. I can't tell you how many times I have pivoted and shifted my message. I needed the backstage to back me up. My PowerPoint was useless because my audience didn't need what I had prepared. They needed what I was inspired by. And I needed to be open and ready to go. Forget all of the guys, dude, we train on body language. We train on tonality. We train on stage geography, all of this stuff. The best thing you can do before you hop on stage is forget it all. Because again, you're so self-absorbed of, am I doing this right? Am I, is my hand in the right place? I don't know what to do with no, forget that. Show up to serve your audience. So just ask them what they need. And if you can fulfill on what they need, then you've done it. When I work with people during an event, I will check in. Maybe a third of the way through, I'll say, how many of you have checked your boxes already? And if you haven't, share with the person next to you what you need to check off your box. And I'm literally polling the audience. So I know by the end of the event, did they get what they came for?
That is amazing. I can't help think you mentioned something about not having your message together. And there's kind of two things. I want to touch on something real quick, and I want to come back to that message because I know that's an important question to ask and get some good answers and clarity on. But not having a scripted message and waiting and listening to what the audience needs and going based on that, that's a little bit different than when we think of and I don't think Tony Robbins necessarily goes to other people's events as much, but like Ed Milet and
it's incredible.
Okay, well, and then Jesse Itzler, like those two, I've actually seen them a couple of times, and they did like the exact same speech. Now it was better the second time around that I saw them, or the multiple times around that I saw them, but it was basically the same speech. And as I'm hearing you talk and knowing how events work, those guys are just to put butts in seats. Now, yes, they have a great message. They can give you some great information, but then it's speakers like yourself who aren't as big as those people are, that have the massive followings, that bring the ticket sales in, that are the ones that are actually teaching the content. And so for the audience, I say that to let you know that if you're not at that level of the Ed Miletts, the Tony Robbins, the Jesse Itzlers, that's okay, because your significance may not be bringing butts in seats. Your significance would then be to actually create an education and an experience so people can actually apply what they learn from you to actually go and have a good takeaway to change their lives. And so I want to circle back now on what I was talking about. Marianne, you mentioned something about, and if you want to put in some thoughts on what I just said too, feel free to do that. But you mentioned about sometimes you scrap your whole speech essentially, and you don't go in with a memorized speech, something that you wrote down. You don't have notes and stuff like that. And I'm sure you get this question all the time as well. But why would you not do that? That just seems bizarre, especially if you're first starting out. Wouldn't you want to have notes? Wouldn't you want to go based off of what you had prepared ahead of time? So please explain that to us.
Totally valid question. I'm speaking on, this is a digital stage, by the way. So this is adding to we're almost at 3,000 stages now. You can't compare my 3,000th stage to your first stage. They're different, right? Mm-hmm. So the ability to hop on stage and deliver from intuition, from inspiration, what the audience needs comes from having delivered 100 speeches, 200 speeches, 5,000 speeches, how many speeches you have. When you're first starting out, the very first thing you need to do is understand and hone in and practice your signature keynote presentation. Like you were saying, this is the thing that people come to listen to you for. It's the thing that they say, oh my gosh, my friend has to come hear you. When are you talking again? And they expect you to say the same thing, right? So there's your signature keynote presentation. But when you get good at that, you're going to start being asked to speak at other places and doing other things. Now, when I have the opportunity to be an MC, which means I may not be a headliner of the event. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. When I'm an MC, this is where I galvanize the people. I ask them what they want. I can tee up the speakers and say, the audience is saying they want this. If there's part of your presentation that gears toward that, that's really what they're hungry for. That's really what they're thirsty for. But even if I am keynoting and the audience is telling me, oh, they want something. Now, again, we do have context. We have the event. We have the event title. We have the marketing that drew them into the event. So we know some kind of relevance to it. But when you understand the 10 principles of the signature keynote presentation, how the flow works, how the energy works, how the personas play into it, you can get to the point where you are literally given any topic. And as long as you're living in an authentic life, you can pull from your life experiences and speak to this and utilize the framework of the 10-step signature presentation to deliver a powerful message that's actually going to serve the audience. And you may be surprised that, oh my gosh, I pivoted. I wasn't expecting to say this. I don't have slides to support this. So everyone scoot your butt in your chair, lean forward and pay attention, because I didn't plan on telling you this, but I need to.
Yeah, that part right there, like scoot forward. I just have to tell you this. I've seen a lot of speakers actually do that. And even in my mind, being the speaker coach, I hadn't thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. They're not prepared. I'm like, oh man, if something has hit them, they feel like they have this message they have to share. Like, I'm more engaged in that now. And because I'm sure there's probably some naysayers listening right now. They're saying, wait, what? You had something prepared. Now you're going to do something that you're not prepared? Yes, because it has to be, there's something is just on my heart. I have to tell you now. It has to be that, not, you can't come in and say, well, I didn't prepare, so I'm just going to try and talk to you based off of what I think you want to hear. Right. No, that's not going to work. People are going to be like, okay. And they're probably going to tune out pretty quickly. Definitely, this should be something, like you said, as you've had the experience, start doing that. If it's your first stage, no, I still wouldn't be like super memorized, have your script, all your notes, stuff like that on that first stage if you can help it. But definitely don't just go up there and wing it either. And I've seen too many speakers, oh, I'll just wing it. I'll just figure it out. If you're thousands of stages in, you can kind of wing it because you know what you're going to talk about and you've done it enough times. but then it's because you've had so much practice. But when you're definitely under 10 stages, you can't just go in and wing it because you're not going to have enough reps in to be able to do that.
Exactly. And that term reps is 100% right. I can wing it if I have the reps because I have muscle memory. I have verbal muscle memory, right? But if I haven't done 100 or 1,000 stages, or I don't mind my presentation well enough, stick to what you know. And that's the thing. When people certify with me, before I say you are a certified speaker, I can recommend you, I can put you on my website, all of that stuff, you have to be able to present with nothing. There's no confidence monitor. There's no notes. There's no cue cards because I want it to come from you. I don't want it to come from your paper. They can read your book later.
Yeah.
I want it to come from you.
So how do you go about helping people structuring their speech?
So I have a 10-step framework that we plant the speech in. In fact, I've got an amazing speaker right now that's working with me. His name is Adrian Hernandez. He's speaking at WealthCon down in Las Vegas in just a couple weeks. And he's got an incredible story. I won't give it away, but his story had all of the ebbs and flows of the energy of an amazing signature presentation. When we first started working together, he had a lot. And as you and I both know, less is more. If I can walk away with one action step rather than a gabillion that I'll never use, it's better. So we pared down and we stripped down and we implanted his story into the 10 steps of the signature presentation. So, I mean, I can go over them with you. The first step is your enrolling questions. You need to teach your audience how to play with you, right? So if I'm going to ask the audience a question, they need to know it's not rhetorical. They need to know to raise their hand. They need to know to say yes. And then I'm going to introduce myself because unless you're Tony Robbins, you got to say your name from stage. And anytime you do, that inspires people to go follow you. So that's a part of your call to action that comes later. And then we begin your hero's journey. That's step 3. We're going to go down to the bottom of the energetic swimming pool because people that are in your audience are down there. And if you can't go down energetically and bring them up with you with your content, then there's no point in having them. After you get to the bottom of the swimming pool, you deliver your promise, which is basically just to say, I promise to deliver you what I'm about to tell you and what worked for me. From there, you have your 3 content chunks. And if you're really expert, you can throw in an experiential exercise after each chunk so that they have something tangible that they've done before they left. It could be journaling. It could be a partner share. It could be something very simple. After those 3 content steps, if you're a facilitator and not just a speaker, and the difference is a facilitator gives an exercise like breaking a board or walking on glass or maybe a process of some kind, that's when that goes in. After that, you have your call to action, which means download my book or follow me on social media. You have to respect the stage that you're on though, because you don't want a financial call to action if the stage doesn't give you permission for that. You have to be really careful with that. And then you end with the heart. You connect and say, this is where I am now, thanks to this whole thing. And then you close with, like you, I value, you share your belief, say thank you and walk off the stage. And when you have that framework, your story fits in, your content fits in, the audience can understand it, it's digestible, and they want to hear you again next time.
I like that.
Fire hose.
No. This is great. And it's just, because at first you're like 10 step, I'm like, oh, that's not what you do on stage. But then you really explained it well. And because one of the things I talk about is like the 3 chunks, like you say. I always say like 3 supporting points to your overarching theme and everything. And so, but that was, I like that. The 10-step process, really, figure out what you're going to do. I can't repeat all 10 to you. So make sure you go back and listen to that, guys, because there's a lot there for sure. But really that important part of after you've introduced kind of what you're talking about, introducing yourself. So important. I'm guilty of not remembering to do that every time I just get into it. I'm like, I just want to pour in the value, and I forget that people need to know who I am so they can continue to bring that value. And I'm kind of curious, have you seen a difference between saying, hey, here, this is me, who I am, versus not saying that at all and just kind of going into the speech?
Definitely. And I notice it more when I'm sitting in the audience, because in the back of their heads, I mean, you've probably experienced this too. You've been in enough audience to know where the speaker doesn't say their name. That's bugging you in the back of your head, because you're probably taking notes and you're like, I don't know what to put down here. If I like this person, I don't know how to find them again. And so it's nagging you and you're distracted in the back of your brain because you don't even know who's talking. That's why when they have it on the news, they put their names underneath there, even if they're on the news for like 30 seconds.
And would this be the same thing if you had an MC that introduced you? Would you still do that even then?
Absolutely. Yeah. And when I'm emceeing, my job is to warm the audience. I get them hyped up. I develop a personal relationship, even if it's 30 seconds before they hop on the stage, with the person that's about to come out. And if I'm the speaker, I'm still going to say my name. I'm still going to kind of share my credibility, which answers their question, why should I listen to you, without throwing in ego, right? But it really is this MC's job to hype up the audience. But if they didn't, you got to pick up the slack.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned just like saying a couple things, your name, and a couple things of credibility. I think it's an important thing as well, is I've seen a lot of speakers that go up there, more not experienced or little experienced speakers, that even without an MC, I understand a little bit lengthier introduction of themselves to give that credibility. But I've seen them, the MC will sit here, blah, 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 say all these things about how great they are since sliced bread. And then they're like, so let me tell you a little bit about me. And the worst part is that's like the first thing they say. They don't even talk about, hey, this is what we're going to talk about today. They just go right into it. And so that's definitely something that newbies on stage really do. And if you go right in just saying, hey, this is me, the MC, that's understandable. They're introducing the speaker. But if you as the speaker start saying, hey, here's who I am, my name, how great I am, what I've done, here's why you should be listening to me, you're going to lose the audience. Because immediately you're about me. You're about yourself rather than the audience. So yeah.
Right on the nose.
Exactly. So that's why, why you say that. I'm sure you tell your clients, hey, you've got to talk about what you're going to talk about there, introduce the topic, have a question, get them curious first, and then bring it back to you very quickly with the credibility. And it's probably like 2 to 3 sentences, nothing where you're going to spend 2 or 3 minutes. And I've seen speakers do that. And that is the worst thing ever. I spent all this money to come here. I don't want to listen to your whole history of who you are and how great you are.
Yeah, it's like I could look you up on Wikipedia. I don't need this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're that big of a deal, you're on Wikipedia. So I shouldn't have to do that. But yeah, and then I like you have the 3 chunks and then have the call to action at the end. How important is that call to action?
If you don't have it, don't speak. That's how important it is. If you don't have a call to action, don't bother. Because if your speech is good enough, they're going to want more of you. Now, the person that I'm training for this big event, he's not allowed to do a giveaway. He's not allowed to do a QR code or anything like that. So what is the call to action? He's going to say, hey, just follow me on social. Right? He's allowed to do that. He checked with the presenter and who owns the stage. He said, come follow me on social. So he has slides. On every slide, he's going to have a social. And then I said, when they go to your social, the pinned post that you need to have on your social is, hey, you probably met me at WealthCon. Thank you for being here. Ryan Pineda is the bomb. Here's the book that I'm giving away to everybody. And they can go to your social media and download that. But if you don't have a call to action, then why are you on stage? Like, seriously, there's no reason to do it and it's not for selfish reasons either. And yes, it does grow your customer base and it will grow your business. That's one of the points of doing this. But if your audience loves you and they can't continue to play with you, then why are you up there?
Such a good point. Such a good point. And that's kind of crazy with not like barely being able to do anything there with the call to action. I get that, not selling a product. I'm surprised by the giveaway there, but hey, everybody's different. And that is smart to then ask, hey, what can I do? And I like that the pin post thing. I hadn't really thought about that. Like when I do a call to action, have that like, hey, here's me on that stage. If you can get a picture out quick enough, or maybe it's just like before, somehow you can get a picture of you saying you're on this stage and have that as that pin post. I think that's awesome. That's a perfect way to make sure that when people do see you, that they know that it is you without having that blue check mark. Is apparently that's the way to be the legit person now, is have the blue check mark and everything.
Oh man, there's so much controversy about it. I just did it and I'm like, I don't even know if it helps, but whatever.
Yeah. I had it for a while. I got rid of it. And then I've had some friends like, saying something to me about it. I'm like, I don't know. It didn't seem to really benefit me. And so we'll see. Maybe down the road I'll get it again, especially if I get more popular, or as I get more popular, maybe then I'll worry about it. But right now I don't have really many same accounts, like accounts that people are trying to mimic me or anything. So I think I'll just hold off on that.
Yeah.
People can just know me.
You're right.
Me.
Once people start copying your logo and copying your name, then go for it just to verify you. But, especially when people are just starting out in their coaching business, people that might be listening to this, it's not an expense that has an ROI necessarily in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned something about business. And before I want to get on the business side of this, but one thing that I've noticed a lot of people, and you probably as well, they talk about wanting to be a speaker, but then they don't really treat it like a business. They just think, oh, it'll be cool to be a speaker. I just want to speak. But then you ask them the simple question of, well, what do you want to speak on? I can speak on anything.
No, you
I
anything
mean,
is
that gets me
nothing.
scratching my head like, what? Like, this is crazy. So talk to us about the importance of like knowing what type of audience you want to talk to, what kind of message you want to have, and like kind of being niched down at, especially at first, in order to really build up that significance as a speaker in the speaking world.
This is critical. I didn't used to think it was, and it is. Now, niching down is a scary thing for people because they think, oh my gosh, if I niche down, I'm going to lose my personality and not going to get to do all the things that I love and talk about it. Well, that's not necessarily true, but people have to know what pulls them to you. Because if you think you're speaking to everybody, nobody will hear you. If you can think you're talking on everything, you're really saying nothing. And that's just the truth of it. When people meet me, they know I'm an elite speaker trainer. They know that because that's what I do. It's what I teach. It's what I love. It's what I'm passionate about. Do I have a hobby farm with chickens in the backyard? Uh-huh. But that's not what I talk about on stage. It's a side fun thing for me. I get to have it and I do post about it on my Instagram every now and then because I think it's fun. But that's not why people come to me. People run to me because they say, I have a message. I don't know how to get it out there. I want to do this. And if you're speaking for the sake of speaking, that's right back into the ego. That's right back into selfish land because I just want to be on stage. I don't care what it's about. I'm like, well, then go on YouTube Live or go on Facebook Live and knock yourself out. But unless you have a business, here's what's going to happen is you're going to get burnt out. I actually was talking to someone just yesterday and I said, tell me about where you see yourself in a year. And he said, oh, I want to speak on stage. I want to do some good. And I said, okay, well, I could get you into one of my courses or programs, but I don't know if there's an ROI for you because a year from now, you don't know where you're headed. And he said, oh yeah. And I said, well, okay, so you can hop on YouTube Live. You can do all this, but if you were to do YouTube Live for a year, what would you have to see after a year in order for you to keep going? And then it clicked. He said, oh, it has to be making me money. And I said, there it is. You either need to be making money in AdSense, you need to be coaching people, you need to be paid to appear on stages. One of those things, something that makes it a sustainable business model. Otherwise, you're just going to burn out.
Yeah, exactly. Having that vision of where you're trying to go. And that's what I tell people all the time when it comes to that message. What is your end goal? To me, that's the selfish part of creating your speech. What do you want the audience to take away at the end? What is your idea when you get done with that speech, when you step off stage? What do you want to happen? If you have no clue, then what are you going to do? How are you going to know if it was a good speech in the first place? Like you said, I want to be able to have money after a year of doing YouTube. I want to get leads. I want to get more followers. There's got to be something so you can create that call to action at the end, but also so that way, whenever you're sharing that message, it's pointed towards something. And yes, being niched down, it is scary at first. And you don't want to be so niched down that it's like you only talk to underwater basket weavers that are, let's call it, men over the age of 70 years old and all this craziness. Like, not that niched down, but let's talk to maybe people like, if let's swimming, since we're talking about underwater basket weaving, maybe it's people that like to go swimming and then you somehow like basket weaving in there, but you're talking to people that like swimming perhaps. So like that's kind of a niche, if you will, very random niche. I don't think it's going to work too well overall. I don't know how big that market is there, but you want to really just kind of niche down a little bit because then people can recognize you. Like you said, it's all about being able to be recognized. When you're for everybody, nobody will recognize you, like you said as well. But on the other side of the business, when what most people, I think, why they want to become speakers outside of maybe creating more impact, giving back to the community through their message, through the lessons they learned and their life stories, is to get paid. And right now, that seems to be the highest paid profession per hour is speaking. So talk to us a little bit, and I know this is a vast a question, but talk to us a little bit about how we could start getting paid as a speaker and some of those steps we need to take in order to get to those paid gigs.
Oh, for sure. So there's lots of ways to get paid as a speaker and lots of stages that you can appear on to go down each one of those avenues. The first one that most people think of when they think paid speaker is that you're paid a speaker fee to appear on a stage. You know, my first speaker fee, I charged $500. I went and spoke for an hour and that was it. And, you know, you can get paid $500,000 if you want Tony Robbins to come in. He charges 1.5. Like you can come in and just be charging a speaker fee. You come up, you show up, you do your thing. You don't necessarily need a call to action that leads to a funnel at that point because you've already been compensated, right? So you could have a call to action of follow me on social or, you know, join my community or whatever, because again, you've already made it part of your business model that you've appeared on stage. That's the sustainability section. So that's number one. Number two, and personally my favorite, is to actually call to action with a funnel that then gathers leads. Because if I'm being paid, let's just say a very standard speaker fee might be $5,000 to $10,000 for those of you that are just in the not beginnings, but intermediate section of this. So if you're getting paid $5,000, you come in, you deliver, you leave. You've got your $5,000 per hour, which is fantastic, right? They didn't even count for travel time and all that fun stuff. But imagine for a second if you knew how valuable a lead, a customer, was for you. Maybe each customer, on average, because you've done the math, you know each customer is worth $1,000. We'll just pull some numbers up, right? You know then your closing ratio. So how many people in the room take action on what I want them to take action on, this call to action, and versus how many that don't. So let's just imagine that I'm going to make up some numbers. There's 100 people in the room. I know that my closing ratio is 20% on average, which is pretty low for a call to action. But let's just say, concerning the call to action and then the pass through to actually buying something, 20% of the room goes through the funnels and actually purchases a thing, right? So if I know that each person is worth $1,000 and there's 100 people in the room, I know based on my math that 20 of those people are going to buy. That's $20,000. I will take that any day over the $5,000 speaker fee, which is a lot of times when I hop on stage, it's a huge win for people because it said, I'll waive my speaker fee for you. You don't have a cost at all. If I can do a call to action and give away a thing that benefits your audience and make you look like an all-star, then I would much prefer to do that instead of being paid a speaker fee. And then there's the third way to do stages, which is a sponsored stage. Now, this is a stage that's not free for you to appear on. You pay money to appear on this stage. And the only reason it would ever make sense for you to do that is if there's an ROI for you down the road. So for example, Jordan Peterson charges $25,000 to share a stage with him. But again, what's the size of my audience? Do I get to have a giveaway or some kind of a call to action where I collect email addresses? What's my closing ratio? And does it make it worth it for me based on the size of that audience and anyone that might listen to the replay to make that 25 grand worth it? And if you know your closing ratio and if you know your average dollar value per client, you can do the math real easy and say, yep, that makes sense. Let's do it.
Awesome. And yeah, those are the three stages that I really know about. I'd almost say maybe a fourth. I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this. Actually, here recently on a Facebook post, there was a guy that posted, and it was a total bait and switch. But he's like, hey, I've got this event coming up. We've got 20 to 30 people looking for speakers, and then start talking to him. And I had to ask him like 3 times, is this me paying to be on that stage? Because he's like, oh yeah, da 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 da. And so that's why I say that's almost like the fourth stage, because the one like sponsoring to be in front of people and getting those email addresses is great. I think it's a great approach, especially depending on where you're at in your speaking career. And I guess if you want to just show that you've been on a stage in front of certain people, paying literally just to be on that stage, and that's basically only significance you get or ROI on that you get, okay, that's up to you. And there's plenty of people out there doing that. But it was just interesting how that I've been seeing this trend more and more. It wasn't just this particular person where I've seen this, but this was most recent. But people seem to be doing that where it's, hey, I'm going to create this stage, and supposedly, who knows if they actually get these kind of people or not, but there's going to be these kind of people there, and you're going to pay me. And this guy in particular was like $7,500 to be on his stage. But he tried to say, well, it depends on if, as I was like, is this a paid thing? Or are you paying me? And he's like, well, I mean, it kind of depends. And it was like, oh, you can come basically pay. And if you pay for a certain package, then you can attend this mastermind in 2024 and then speak on the stage in 2025
So
and
you're
all this stuff.
sponsoring that stage. Yeah. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
it sounded like a little bit of a shady, but a forced sponsorship.
Yeah. So it's just interesting how it is. I mean, so I'm not going to say it's wrong necessarily. I think it's wrong on the person that's doing that because they are being a little shady rather than being upfront like, hey, this is a paid stage to be on if you want to. And then, yes, there is significance in that because then you can have photos, you can have videos from that. But it's just like another way, if you will, to get on stage. And long term, you'll get an ROI because now people are seeing you on more stages and everything. And just out of curiosity there, because some people, and this is basically like business, as you're getting started, it's a onesie, twosies kind of thing. How was that for you? And I know you started at a very young age with speaking, but when was kind of like that? I don't know the right word, but like the catalyst where it went from onesies, twosies here and there, where you were getting stages where you were consistently getting on more and perhaps even being asked to be on them versus you having to ask people to be on them.
It really happened when I saddled up to a mentor. I didn't understand what mentorship was. All I understood about higher education was go to college and get a degree. And I realized very quickly that I wanted to out-earn all of my professors. None of the professors that were teaching me had the revenue that I wanted to make. And I thought, well, you can teach me how to be a college professor because that's what you know, but you can't teach me to make the money that I want to make. So I got to look somewhere else. And that idea of mentorship started to nibble at me. I started going to a lot of seminars and all of these things. And I went to a private event at my brother's house, of all places. I met a mentor who said that they had this track record. And I was super skeptical. I was like, oh, well, if you think this, well, I'm going to call you on it. Got his phone number, called him. From what I could tell, he was everything that he said he was. And I was like, okay, hold on, there's something here. So then I started going to each one of this mentor's events and I started looking with my backstage goggles and why are they putting the pad of paper over there? And why are they talking this way? And then it evolved into that particular mentor needing a co-host for a stage. Now I have made a commitment to myself. If I'm going to pay 25 grand to mentor with this person, then I need to suck everything I can out of it. I burned all the other bridges. I quit my job. I was just at the feet of soaking everything in. And this event that was coming up, he actually, at the small event prior, he said, he gathered a bunch of people in the back of the room and said, I need a co-host. I'm going to, work with people that I know and so forth. And he called this little cluster of people on a whisper campaign out of the back of the room to kind of give them a chance to appear on a stage in the lobby of the hotel room or the building and see what they were made of and see could any of these people be a potential candidate to even co-host or MC for me. I wasn't invited to that group, but I snuck out anyway. And I was like, I want to do stages. This is it. So I delivered that. And within 3 months, I was teaching public speaking to people who paid 25 grand to learn.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, it just flipped. There's something here. And then I was asked to appear on all these stages. I was asked to MC. I was asked to travel and do all these things. And that was, I have to go back to the answer to the question, which is mentorship. If you want something that you don't have, find someone that's got it and saddle up next to them. Pay any price, travel any distance to be able to do it.
Mentorship is so important. And actually, I think this is a good question. So how do you actually do that mentorship? Because it's okay, get mentorship, get somebody you know, but sometimes they're too busy or there's just a lot of things going on. We're all busy. How do you get the most out of that? I mean, I know you said do absorb anything you can, but did you have like a certain kind of schedule that you try to do, ask certain questions? Like what did that kind of look like, roughly speaking, for those that maybe want to end up seeking a mentor? Because I think that would be an important answer for them.
I spent, it boils down to something very simple, not as complicated as a schedule and all that. It's the power of proximity. Our most valuable asset is not our money. It is our time, because it is the only non-renewable resource that we have, period. So I said, I'm going to spend as much time as I possibly can sitting next to this mentor as possible. I don't care if I'm running to get his coffee. I don't care if I'm editing videos. I don't care if I'm taking registrations in the back of the room, volunteering, because I'm so hungry and starving for what they know. I learned more than what they taught me. because I was observing everything. I thought, how do they run business? It wasn't part of any kind of curriculum or deliberate training. Like, how does he talk to his people? How does this person connect with this person? How do they network? And other mentors started to come to my life, and I started to learn from them. Everyone can teach me something. So every event that I felt inspired to go to, I went to. Every book that I was told to read, whenever there was a book mentioned from stage, I'd read it because there was value in that person who was ahead of me who read it. So I picked up the book, and I was just this starving sponge, and anything that they did that yielded results, I tried to copy until I started to get traction, and it worked. I know that sounds overly simplistic, but if I tell you that I budgeted 3 to 6 p.m. every day, that might not be your perfect time, right? It is the energy of the action more than the action itself that will drive the result.
And the other part which we mentioned way earlier, you had a desired outcome, which was to learn how to be a speaker. And so if you had that in mind, and what did you need to do? You needed to pay attention to that person that was a speaker. So have that desired outcome, know what your goal is, and then find somebody, like you said, with the mentorship to do that and just absorb everything. So it's not just wait till they teach you something. It's about observing everything that they do. And you mentioned the proximity, being around them any chance you can. Yeah, go get that coffee. Just be there. Being around them, you're gonna pick up those things. So amazing answer to how to really take the most advantage of that mentorship and the things to really do within that. Marianne, this has been amazing. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I know my audience has gotten so much value out of this episode. If they want to follow you, as I know they will, where's the best place for them to follow you? I know you're everywhere. So where's the best place for them to follow you?
I am omnipresent. I just have blasted out there. I do have a YouTube channel up and running, but I'm most active on Instagram. It's just Marianne_Hickman. You'll find me there. And Philip, I just want to say thank you again for this opportunity to share with your people. These people are lucky to have you. And if you're listening to this, then Philip is the person you need to saddle up to. If you want him as your mentor, then you've got to listen to every podcast that he produces because you have an obligation. If you want someone to be your mentor, then you have an obligation to digest everything that they have produced because you better come to the table educated with the proper questions. And if they've already said it, it's your responsibility to go listen.
Amazing. Well, Marianne, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much, Philip.